Next up, we have the pleasure of hearing from two of football's European powerhouses. There are over 70 clubs, 70 football clubs currently active in China, growing their market presence with different varieties of strategies, some focused on digital, some focused on grassroots, commercial, etc., etc. Today, first up, we're going to have Jordi Camps, the Managing Director of APAC for FC Barcelona, and please give him a warm welcome to the stage.
So you have for the presentation?
You're up. There you go.
Here you are. So I don't know if it's gonna. So please feel free to interrupt me at any time. I know you have a lot of questions.
I will do.
Okay, so I mean, just represent the audience. I would like to share with you a small presentation, very short presentation, in order to try to explain what we are doing in China and in Asia in general. So when we're talking about Barca, I think you already know more or less who we are. When we look at the numbers, we realize that we have almost 300 million fans all over the world. And when looking at the breakdown, we see that Asia is 40% of these fans. So looking at Asia and looking deep inside and in China, we see that we have 47 million fans in China. Just for you to have a sense, in Spain we are 44 million people. The population of Spain is 44 million people, and in China we have more fans, Barca fans, than Spaniards in Spain. So, and when we analyze the numbers and the marketing numbers and the brand awareness that we have, we see that thanks to I would say, the legacy of the Dream Team, the legacy of Guardiola, the legacy of many great footballers, we can see that the aided awareness that we have in China is so big. So let me show you a video of who we are.
You think you know me, don't you? I'm much more than that. You think I'm nothing more than my victories on the field. But it's more than just what happens out there. On the grass, on the pitch, on the court, in the biggest stadium in Europe, and even in places where grass never grows. Everywhere, without losing my love for my roots. You think I'm nothing more than my trophies. But what is a trophy? A girl's first soccer match? A boy with a baccalaureate certificate? A discovery? I know I'm not simple. There's no place for simplicity here. The score? That's just numbers for me. What matters is the way we reach our goals. The way others reach their goals. It's much more than just winning or losing. It's going all out to defend a unique style. On and off the pitch. I know I have a responsibility. That's what being powerful means. I can change a person's life. That's beautiful, that's challenging, but it's true. I can share my knowledge with those who can need it. I can make you look where nobody else is looking. I can be where others can't be. I can, so I have to. This is why I persevere to become better. Excellent. This is why I'm not just one person. I'm hundreds, thousands, millions. This is why we're different. This is why Barca is more than a club.
So I try to show this video because I think it summarizes perfectly what we are, and who we are. When we say that we are more than a club, it's not by chance. It's not because a marketing guy invented it. It's because we have different things and different pillars that we base our strategy on. So the style of play, the ownership, we don't belong to any rich guy. So we have the ownership of we have almost 150,000 members voting for the president every 4 and 6 years, Catalan identity, other sports. So we are well known for football, but also for female team, basketball, futsal, etc. And of course, La Masia and the values. So when talking about China, China's a strategic market, but everybody says that, right? Everybody says China is strategic, but they don't know what or how or what we can do. We started the operation here in China six years ago. We started because our commercial needs. So we started, as all the clubs, I think, started, trying to get more revenues from China. But after 6 years, we developed a global strategy. First of all, we put the football in the center. No? So we are football clubs. We are not brands or commercial brands only. So we need to talk about football. We need to talk about the sports. We need to talk about who we are. And I think this guy will explain.
I don't care where you're from. If you tell me that you love football and you don't love Barcelona, you have a problem.
So yes, hello. So as Titi Henry said, no, I mean, if you love football and you don't love Barca, you have a problem. And we invented the unique style of play, the tiki-taka, call it whatever you want. It's just how we based our football strategy in the 3 Ps. So, you know, in marketing, we have the 4 Ps. So in our football team, we have the 3 Ps. So pressure, possession, and precision. And this gives you a unique style of play. Then in China, of course, and in Asia in general, we have to look at the numbers. Okay, so 1.4 billion people, commercial brands. In China is strategic everywhere. And when we look at Barca commercial brands, we can say that we have almost 40 brands, and 15 out of these 40 come from Asia, and 6 out of these 15 come from China. So when you look at the revenue streams and you look at the commercial revenue stream, you will see that 40% of our revenues, commercial revenues, come from Asia. This said, the more important part of this is not the commercial per se, it's not the money, is how the commercial brands can teach us to adapt ourselves to the China reality. So we have examples of Oppo that I don't know is, yes.
Ni hao, Oppo. 我是 FC Barcelona's ambassador, Guys Mendieta. Since our relationship began in 2015, our shared belief in ambition and innovation have helped us achieve more than a partnership. Today, audiences around the world know that together, we strive to provide our fans happiness and enjoyment in everything we do. For this reason, we are incredibly proud that Oppo is such an important part of our global Barca family. Together, we have the winning formula. Together, we are a winning team. On behalf of everyone at FC Barcelona, thank you for 4 fantastic seasons. We cannot wait to see Oppo continue to be part of our journey for a better future, together.
Hello, Oppo. Ni hao, Oppo.
Thanks for becoming part of our team.
Thanks for joining our family.
See you soon.
See you soon.
So thanks to partners like Oppo, like Pudong Bank, like Shimao, like Mission Hills, we got to know a little bit more about China. So as I said, we have an office in Hong Kong, but we don't only look for partners, we try to bring a piece of Barca into China as well. That's why academies is the second pillar of our strategy in China. We have 6 academies in China, we have 15 in Asia. We manage all the academies from Hong Kong, but we have local Catalan coaches living 24/7 in each country. So for example, in China, we have a school academy in Kunming, or academy here in Haikou, and we have in here 2 Catalan guys, Sergi and Pere, that are all here, I think. And they live here, and they bring the methodology of Barça. So the unique style of play that we have and that we talked about at the very beginning, they have it, they have the methodology, and they try to bring this methodology to the kids. Then, apart from that, these technical directors, they try to train, coach some local people. So in here, we have 8 local coaches training under our methodology. And then the real objective is to bring a piece of Barça to these kids and to get them the opportunity to live and train as Barça players. Now we have reached a good milestone, and it's a good opportunity for us. You know that we have this big project in Haikou that we'll explain to you a little bit later. But in this July, we will have the first Barça Academy China Cup. Okay, so I don't know if you are aware, we have a huge international Barça Academy Cup in Barcelona, where almost, I think, 2,000 plus kids, they play. And now we will have this China focus cup here in Haikou. The other pillar of our strategy, of course, is the fan engagement. And we're talking about fan engagement, let me focus on the offline part first. Barcelona, Camp Nou, Leo Messi, everything is far away from here, so we have to bring a part of this experience to the local people. So we are very proud to have a Barça experience here in Haikou. I mean, and we are very happy to see people coming, like NBA, like Hard Rock Coffee, like Soccerex, etc., coming to Haikou. We started this project 3 years ago. We recently announced the opening of this project. This project is about a museum, an experience that I hope to see you all there this evening. Then we have the Barça Academy, I spoke about it, and then we have the store. About the experience and the store are the first one abroad, are the first one outside of Spain. And it's not by any chance that we did it in China. Why Haikou? Because we believe that Haikou is the future. We believe that it's a long-term project. I mean, we have many things to develop together. The government is investing in the tourist side and the sports side. So we want to be here when this explodes. The other important part, talking about fan engagement, we have 2 other pillars. One is the merchandising. You know, we are very well known because of having one of the, I would say, best stores, football stores in the world in Barcelona. So we want to do it in China as well, and the commerce. And the third thing, before you ask, because I think you're going to ask, is the summer tours and all this stuff, because we want to bring players to the countries. No? We are still working on bringing the first team to China. I don't know if you're aware or not, but the Spanish Federation changed the calendar so many times, so we had to redo the plans. We were planning to come here 1 week, and then because of the calendar, we have to try to come earlier if we can, so we are still working on it. For sure, we will go to Japan. And why to Japan? Because, as you know, we have Rakuten as a main sponsor. We have Konami as one of the main partners that we have. And we have, of course, 4 Barça Academies, a strategy in there as well. So we will go for sure to Japan. And I don't know if this year or the next year, but we will come to China. And when I say China, is Haikou. And then we will see if we can bring the team to other places. Then, of course, talking about China, we have to talk about digital. So everything is digital in China. Everything, I mean, everybody's using the apps and smartphones as part of their body. So we had to develop a 360 digital strategy, David, that you know very well. And this said, so we have our own platforms. We have to use third parties platforms. And of course, we have to rely on media partners as talking about, for example, iQIYI, Youku, etc. They have the rights of La Liga, so we work for them in order to create local content. So we get the global content and we adapt it to the local and reality, or we create our local content in Barcelona or in China, in the academies, with our partners, etc. And last but not least, and sorry because I think you are falling asleep, we have this Barça's More Than a Club, not just for these pillars, but for giving something else. No? So we have our foundation that we are working very closely with UNICEF and with Beko, that is one of our partners, that they launched the Eat Like a Pro campaign. Then we have what we call it Peñas, that are official Barça fan clubs. So we have one in Shanghai, one in Beijing, and another in Hong Kong. And then we have the Barça Innovation Hub. That is a project that we launched 2 years ago. It's kind of the center of the knowledge, the hub of the knowledge. So when we talk about Barça, we talk about performance, sports, or marketing, brand, I would say business in general, etc. Barça Innovation Hub, what they do, is just to get all this knowledge in order to become one of the best hubs in the world. So I would say that that's all. I leave it to you to ask me whatever you want.
Yeah, got about 4 questions left, just crossing them off as you went through the presentation. Thank you, Jordi. So just kicking off with grassroots, you've talked a lot about that. You've made more progress than a lot of clubs have. Now 6 training centers across the country specific to region. How do you address the wider market? So each training center has 100, 200, 300 kids that goes through it. How do you try and scale that to a much, much wider audience of kids?
So we are working in 2 different levels. Okay, first of all, to get more, to open more academies. Okay, in other cities, like could be Shanghai, could be Beijing, could be Shenzhen, could be Guangzhou, etc. That's one thing. But as you said, it's not scalable. No? So we will reach to a point that depending on the fields and the coaches that we have, that's all. Our aim is to have 1,000 kids in here, 500 in Kunming, and so on. But I think, as I mentioned before, China is about digital. So how we adapt this methodology, this I would say unique style of trying to train the kids to a more global audience. And by doing so, we will end up doing some special programs using digital channels and special content.
So the end goal of that approach is to tie in with China's 50-point plan and improve the level of young footballers in this country? Or is it really to have an end goal of bringing some of that talent over to Barcelona?
No, I mean, we don't like to say that we train football players. We teach people through our values, okay? So in here we have the challenge that in Europe doesn't happen. So when I played football, when I was young, I played football because I enjoyed a lot playing football, not because I wanted to become a football player. In here, in China, they want to become a football player or they don't play. So we are trying to change the mindset, and that's why we have 2 different approaches. One is training because they like to train and they like to be a Barça fan, etc., or get to know what Barça is through digital channels, etc., giving a piece of Barça in terms of methodology, technical stuff, etc. Of course, it would be great to have a Chinese player in our first team, or in Barça B, or a female team, but it takes time. So China, for sure, will have a very talented players in the future. We have a good proof now in La Liga with Boulay playing in Espanyol, which give us, not only Espanyol, but to La Liga and all the clubs, good exposure in China. But our objective is not to, I mean, of course, having a Chinese player would be fantastic. But I mean, football is football. No? We need to win La Liga, Champions League, etc. And we cannot convince. I mean, if we have the talent, we will bring them to Barcelona.
On Boulay, it's a huge milestone for Chinese football to have a player consistently playing at one of the top levels in Europe. How has that been received by the wider Catalan community and the Spanish community in the city?
Good. As I said, I mean, of course, Messi is Messi, and our players are our players. And when you see Boulay effect in Barcelona, it's not that much, but in here is a lot. No, he's performing very well. It's a good surprise in Spain, I would say. But for us, it's like they did, Espanyol in this case, that they are based in Barcelona, they did something fantastic, and we are all try somehow to follow this trend.
So on top players, you have a wealth of talent in your first team. China's an icon market, so 40–50% of fans choose to follow a team because of their favorite player. You have a team full of stars. One, how supportive are those players like Messi in what you're trying to achieve in China? And do you see a gap between China and other markets in Messi fans versus Barcelona fans?
Well, I think we have our friends of Real Madrid in here, and they suffered a lot, or they are suffering a lot because of Cristiano Ronaldo leaving. No, this said, Messi is part of our batch. He's part of our history. Messi was trained and was grown in Barcelona. He joined when he was 12 years old, so we cannot think about Messi without thinking about Barca and the other way around. Of course, Messi is important. Of course, celebrities in China are important, but I would say that when we say that we are more than a club, it's because we are more than Messi. We are not FC Messi, we are FC Barcelona. So we had Kubala, we had Ronaldinho, we had Romario, we had, many players, many players, Iniesta, Xavi, etc. And Barcelona and Barca as a club still remains there, and we are still winning. It's going to be a challenge, but not only in China, all over the world. No? So we have been seeing Messi for the last 12 years, 13 years. It's amazing. For us, it's the best in the history. So it's like you cannot think about Chicago without Michael Jordan, no? Or tennis without Federer. So it's like we will survive for sure.
So that culture of the Barcelona way is unique to your club, and you've addressed it with your training programs. It is more than just teaching people how to play football. In China, there's the unique element that many parents of kids don't necessarily, they're not familiar with the game, they didn't grow up playing the game. You don't have the same wide open spaces like we do in Europe, so it's much more of a focused approach. Do you see a huge amount of parents' involvement across your academies, or are there specific training programs for the parents?
It's not we don't have any specific training programs for the parents, but we try to involve them because the way that we train their kids is completely different. So in China, I would say that they train by repetition, no? So they repeat the things, so pass 1,000 passes, shoot 1,000 shoot. In here, we try to force them to think. So it's not a mechanical thing that you will learn. It's like you think first, and then you act. So you get the ball, then you think, then you pass, then you do whatever you want. So it's kind of different, the approach that we do. And the parents, I think that they are really happy because it's difficult to understand at the very beginning. Because it's like, oh, my son is not running. Oh, what the hell? My son is not touching the ball. What the hell? Yeah. But we try to provide something different. So the methodology that we bring to our academies is the same methodology that the first team uses, the second team, etc. So less professional, of course, but because of the competition mainly. But we train the parents by training the kids.
So beyond football and beyond that Barcelona way, the Més que un club, it is more than just football. How does the basketball element, the other elements to the club, translate over to China? Is that a focus for now, or is that something you're going to be building into your...
So it's a matter of offer and demand, no?
Yeah.
So, for example, basketball, handball, futsal, and roller hockey are very strong in Europe. We got to the Final Four of futsal, roller hockey, and handball, and we got to the quarterfinals of the basketball Europe competitions. We won the Copa del Rey, the National Cup, with in all the indoor sports. The female team got to the final of the Champions League as well. But in China, the demand is more asking about football rather than other sports. We try because we know that basketball in China is super strong, thanks to what NBA has been doing for the last 20 years, with many things that they did. And we have a demand, but it's not such big as the football.
Even on basketball, you have Pau Gasol as a global ambassador. The FIBA World Cup coming up in China this summer, is basketball going to be something that the club looks at as a next frontier for China?
Pau Gasol is our ambassador only in the States.
In the States.
As you know, Pau Gasol is a former basketball player, and he has been living in the States for the last 15 years, I think. So he has a lot of things to teach us in terms of approaching the United States way. China is completely different. When you look at the Spanish national team, basketball, I mean, we can see a lot of Spaniards, Barcelona players, and Pau, of course, will give us help on that sense. But also we have Juan Carlos Navarro, that was one of the captains of Spain and Barcelona, and will help us.
So on the experience, you've talked about the center that's open, the guys are going to get a chance to see that later. Is that part of a wider strategy to roll it out across China, or is it more of a commercial-led initiative where you're building this as a hub and you want to attract people to this as a tourist destination?
So I have a boss that he told me that first we need to test, and then we need to decide what to do next. No, so we are testing the water in here. We were very ambitious. We have this joint venture with a Chinese partner that is Mission Hills, that you know very well. We think it's going to be the first of many. We have reached a global agreement with another supplier or partner that is Parques Reunidos. So we want to bring these pieces of Barça everywhere. The next one will be in the States. Yeah. So first was in China, then it's going to be in the States, and then we will think to export it elsewhere. India could be the third stage.
Okay. Back to training. You have a very successful women's team, broke records this year. Historically, China's success at the top level has come from female athletes. Tennis, table tennis, badminton, volleyball, and of course football. You have the Women's World Cup coming up this summer. China have high hopes for a semi-final, final, potentially winning it. Does the training and development of young female athletes play a big role in your work here and potentially bringing them over to the...
Yeah, of course.
Probably a closer gap to the women's
For us,
team.
football is not just a male sport. It's female as well, so we enroll girls as well in our academies. And talking about female team in Barcelona, they are professionals, as you said. We got to the final of the Champions League. And we want to be part of this project or this objective of transforming the amateur female football to a professional industry. No? So I think we were one of the first of having a big sponsor for the female team, that is Stanley, that is a US brand. We will see how Spain performs in the World Cup. China for sure, they will get to the semifinals or something like this because they are very well. And here in Haikou, we have our fields, our football fields, but next to us we have the CFA football fields as well. So we share this knowledge and we share our experience, and the female team, they will train as well.
So that, on working with the CFA and the Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Education, China has very publicly come out and stated its ambition to be a world superpower within football. President Xi's 50-point plan is clearly trying to address both the quality of football domestically and also the active lifestyle of the youth. Do you work very, very closely with those organizations in your development, in your training centers, or are they slightly separated?
We are trying to create these bridges. It's very, so as we have our unique style of doing things, as I said before, it's very difficult to convince everybody to join, and it's very difficult for us to convince everybody. This said, with the CFA, yes, we work closely with them, CSL, Chinese clubs, because we need to learn from them. So we are not trying to come here with, our book and try to force them to study it. We try to adapt ourselves to the reality, and in order to do so, we need to create this good relationship, because otherwise it's going to be impossible for us or for anybody to succeed in this country.
So your role is based out of Hong Kong, but it's an APAC role. You're building a team in Hong Kong. You have some guys on the ground in China. How important do you believe it is to build that team locally here, or do you feel your strategy is to be based in a hub in Asia and you can play the role across all regions?
I think I said it many times. The only way to learn about something is by being on the ground. if you don't have a team in here, it's impossible to succeed in China. But not only China, in Japan, in Brazil, in Mexico, and everywhere. So we decided to set up the office in Hong Kong, honestly, because logistic-wise, makes completely sense. So, we have been traveling a lot lately. We have a team of 20 people in Hong Kong. We have a team of Chinese people, but we travel all the time. So from Hong Kong, it's easy to move to everywhere. But China, because it's a strategic market, and as I said, we have 6 schools, 6 partners, a huge business, is the priority. But if you are not here, and if you don't have a good staff of Chinese people or Asian in general, it's going to be impossible to do things in here.
So time for one last question. We've talked about the 50-point plan, China trying to become a football superpower. What, from your experience and from the way Barcelona have done it, what would you say is the one or the single most important thing that they need to get right at an infrastructure level in order to make that jump?
It's not only facilities infrastructure. I think real estate in China in general is not an issue. If they want to build fields or structure, they will do it. It's not that problem. The problem that I see is that how you put the sports culture or football culture in this country. Chinese sports individuals are very good, but you mentioned tennis, you mentioned ping pong, you mentioned individual sports. When talking about a team, you need to understand something else. So our challenge is, I would say, China will have a national team playing in a World Cup. We'll have a very strong local teams playing abroad, etc., etc. It's not a matter of what, because I think they will achieve. It's a matter of when. So when I mean when, 10, 12, 5, 20 years, they will get there. They will be one of the biggest or most important countries in the football industry, and we want to be part of it because we think we can contribute.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time today. And I think my microphone is off.
Yeah, it is.
But, guys, could we get a warm round of applause for Jordi? Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
So next up, we have one of the new faces of European football in China. At the helm of City Football Group, we have Scott Munn, the new CEO of China. Welcome to the stage, Scott.
Thanks very much. Good to be here.
So first off, a little bit about you. You've had a pretty awesome journey through the sports world and specifically through the City Football Group world. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what your role is going to be at the club?
Sure. I guess I'm the last speaker before happy hour, so I'm either going to hold you in here or you're going to leave to the bar, which is always an interesting one. But I've spent about 25 years working in the sports industry. I started working at the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney as my first role, and then went through and I've worked in basically every major sport in Australia, from Australian rules football, the National Rugby League, and in the last 10 years I've been working in football. I started a football club 10 years ago in Melbourne in the A-League. I sold that club to CFG along with our chairman at the time, and for the last 5 years I've worked for CFG with Melbourne City as the CEO. For the last 6 months I've been working on this project in China. So I come now as a resident of Chengdu to run CFG's business.
Nice. And so CFG, for those of you that don't know, is much more than just Manchester City. Could you give us a quick overview of the different pillars of the group and how that's going to play out in China?
Yeah, sure. We've got a video. We might cut to a video. I think that's a good sort of way to show CFG. So I think that hopefully sums it up. We have 7 clubs, 20 offices based all around the world. The positive is you can win a lot of games on a weekend or you can lose a lot of games. And the other one is you don't get much sleep because if you're watching a game in Melbourne at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and Manchester kick off at 4 o'clock in the morning and then followed by Girona at 9 o'clock in the morning, it can make a long 24 hours. But we're marching to the beat of our own drum. We're excited. We think that we've got a fantastic proposition in the football world.
So on that note, the latest addition to the City football squad is Chengdu Zhongyao. That's
Sichuan
Zhongyao. The decision to look at that region and that club was. Do you want to talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, we have a partner here in China with CMC. They invested in us a number of years ago now, and it was always our goal to be in the market here. And when we talk about football and we want to be in a market, we want to play football in the market. We're in the football business. We don't have basketball teams. We don't have badminton teams. We have football clubs. So we were very clear that we wanted to take a football club here. We looked all throughout China. We spent 3 years doing it, from everything from 3rd division through to CSL. And ultimately, we made what we think is the best decision. We chose an unbelievable city, a modern city that is growing at an incredible pace, no CSL team, a city that loves football. In the past, they've had CSL teams and crowds have been there, and a municipality that wants to invest in football. They're spending incredible amounts of money on infrastructure. They have a vision, and we think, along with our 2 partners, CMC and Ubitech, that it was the right place to acquire a team and then to take that team on a journey.
So that'll take up a huge amount of your time and focus, but it's a pretty wide remit across the group, City as a club, and also the new team. How are you going to split your time across commercial, the team, building up a HQ and offices in China?
I think we're really lucky. We've been here for 5 years now. We have a great office in Shanghai run by David Tung, who's been with us since the start, and a team running marketing and commercial. So they're able to focus on that. We'll have the office in Chengdu, which really will be a service provision area, but also then focus on the club. So we're going to resource heavily in terms of staffing over the next 12 to 18 months. And it's about being flexible. Yesterday I was doing a presentation for Manchester City. Today I'm doing a presentation for CFG. On Monday I was meeting with the club about the summer window and acquiring players to strengthen so we can make a charge to get promotion this year. So we have to be flexible, but we have to have experts in the market working locally to achieve what we need to.
On Manchester City, digitally they're very strong and have been consistently with a breadth of coverage for the local fans here. You signed a partnership with Tencent last year. Has that been a successful deal? Is that something you're looking to continue and grow?
Yeah, I think probably to take it back a step, actually, one of the most important things I believe we've done here is the Shanghai office actually looks after marketing here. It's run locally and operated locally. And we would talk here, when we talk about CFG internally, we talk about a global business that operates locally. I think what's most important is we can't have people from Manchester or London telling mainland Chinese how to do social media when most of the channels don't exist there. So our marketing team here is run by Kevin Lee, great guy, huge history in digital marketing. All of his team around him are focused on growing the business here. The relationship with Tencent was really successful. But what I've learned in the short time in working here is you've got to be flexible because the digital channels are just changing so quickly. So we operate locally. We're well resourced in terms of headcount. We lean into Manchester when we need to for content, but ultimately we're pushing it locally as hard as we can.
So the channels certainly change fast, and in this case, sort of the broadcasters. So we're switching over to a new rights cycle. Pretty sizable amount of money been paid for the Premier League fees. Do you have an obligation, or how will you be working with PP Sports to try and make their subscription model work in China?
Yeah, I think, thankfully my history is I've grown up in the markets where we have a pay TV and a free-to-air component. We were chatting about this earlier, and I think, there's no question that after 10 years of having one broadcaster and changing to a new one, there is going to be challenges. The meetings that we've held with Suning and PP have been really promising because I think they see those challenges and realise This is an unbelievable competition. I mean, if we think back to last weekend, it was at half-time, I was watching the game at 1 a.m. in Australia, wondering whether we're going to win the Premier League. And we've seen here, people want to watch that. People want to see content. So we know the content is great. What's important is we can get the subscription base up, and we can work with PB Sports to do that, that we get a lot of matches for us on free-to-air as well. We want to be more than 10 games if possible. But it's going to take a little bit of time. I think it will be, this year has to be one step back. We're losing a partner that's been there 10 years and we're starting again. But we have to accelerate it as quick as we possibly can to get back to where we were and to grow the business, because we know the product is right.
And we talked a bit about those subscription models earlier. China is unique in that the digital subscription model has progressed much, much faster than in the West, but the adoption of that has been pretty slow. They have season subscription models. They have monthly. You can subscribe per team, per month, or per season, all the way down to per game.
Yeah.
You can pay a very small subscription fee. Do you believe one or other of those models is going to be more successful in the long run?
I think one, and I sort of look into the crowd here and wonder what the millennial count is, but the reality is millennials are moving away from what I would say are season subscriptions. And this is not just a sport acquisition. This is in anything they do. Millennials, you're a millennial. You know, you don't want to lock yourself in for a year. And we're seeing this around the world, whether it's in season tickets, whether it's in pay TV. We have to be flexible. So whether that's offering small multi-game packages, whether that's offering just one game. Ultimately, there will be fans here that just want to watch the derby. And we don't want to lose those people. We want them to be engaging. So I think, you know, from our perspective, we'd love to see a really flexible program which allows people to come in and out as they need and give us a funnel to grow. But also those rusted on, you know, people that want to buy the season of Premier League can lock it in and be rewarded financially by doing that. So I think for us, we want to see both options, and you know, I think they will. You talked about last year, you probably bought more individual packages and ended up paying more than if you'd bought it for the season. That's a millennial trait. Yeah. That's the reality of where millennials are. So, and it's the same in season tickets. You know, I think the days of people being a seat ticket holder for a season are changing. Lifestyles are changing. Consumption of football is changing. So we have to be more flexible.
On youth and on millennials, City have had a very successful model in certainly in the UK of targeting the next generation of football fans. How does that, you're going to translate that model overseas through youth development, through even the way that you target them on digital, through social media? Yeah,
I think we've actually just launched recently a new specific app. This is obviously not here, but an app specifically targeted at 5 to 8 year olds. I mean, the research now that we know about children is, you touched on it earlier, you know, firstly, the athletes make a big difference. And I would like to think, you know, we have some unbelievable mature age athletes, you know, Kevin De Bruyne, Sergio Aguero. But then I think also if you look at some of our younger athletes coming through, Gabriel Jesus, you know, we would like to think these are really appealing to that younger community. And I think the other thing to remember is 5 to 8 year olds are the decision makers for who they're going to support in the future. Probably 20 years ago when you were growing up, you supported almost who your father supported. Yeah. That's no longer the case. You know, 5 to 8 year olds who are being influenced now by what's going on in the playground, what's going on in their life, and making a decision based on which football team they'll then support. And I think for us, we need to make sure that we're very clearly targeting the 5 to 8 year olds, along with other markets, and influencing those people in a different way, because we want them, once they're an 8 year old and they've made that decision, they're rusted for life.
Somewhere between 60 and 70 million 5 to 8 year olds in China. A lot of clubs have different approaches to youth development, grassroots, soccer schools. What's your and the group's philosophy behind how you reach and how do you train those 60 to 70 million?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's obvious the market here is enormous, and we saw the Barca stats before. You know, there's more fans here for them than in Spain. I think what's real is there's a couple of things that we don't do globally. We're not wedded to the franchise model. We think that to run a soccer school program here, franchising it out, not having a lot of control, is really not a long-term strategy. You know, it may work short-term and it may generate some immediate revenue, but it's probably not where we're focused. You know, we've established great academy programs around the world. We have one in the heart of our owner in Abu Dhabi. We have the biggest football school program there, pay-to-pay program, and we run it ourselves. I think here we'll probably certainly be looking at different ways to engage. It's about working in markets that are important. Clearly, Chengdu is a focus for us. We have a club there. We want to engage with the people. We want to aid local football talent. And we have other activities where in Beijing we have a relationship with K1 International Schools where we have Manchester coaches actually in there running football. But the franchise model's probably not where we're going ahead.
And you've had a long history of working closely with government or ministry back from President Xi's visit to Manchester 3-4 years ago. Is that sort of the start of the journey that's going to continue in your work with the government?
Yeah, I think it was unbelievable to have the president visit us, and I think if anyone hasn't seen the Sergio Aguero selfie, it was an amazing photo. It was an amazing visit, and for us, we will continue to work with the government and the various municipalities to really add to the football ecosystem. I think it would be presumptuous for us to say we're going to come to China and change the world, because we're not. We're going to bring global learnings, not just from Manchester, but from New York, from Girona, and we're going to impart what works here, and there'll be some things that don't, and we won't do it. But we definitely want to work with all of the governments, all of the municipalities, to help them achieve their goals, and hopefully along the way it helps us.
On the subject of coming to China, the first team is due here in the summer for the Premier League trophy, off the back of a treble-winning season, much as it pains me to say that as a Liverpool fan. What can the fans expect from the upcoming trip, the upcoming tour?
We're really excited. Our last visit was 2016.
We won't talk about that one.
And what's very clear is our chairman has made it a goal that we're here regularly. And so it's been 3 years since we were last here. We're really looking forward to the visit. Shanghai and Nanjing, we're playing 2 games. Ticket sales are unbelievably positive, which is great for us. And we get to bring 4 trophies, not 3, 4. So on the back of an amazing season, to come here with 4 trophies, to spend time in 2 amazing cities, is going to be something exciting. And we talk about we now have 17 official supporter clubs here in China. I think it will be 20 by the time the tour happens. And we have some unbelievable fans. If I can cut to one quick story, we had a fan where she went to 5 different live sites to watch games this year, queued, and she has a collection of Sergio Aguero memorabilia. And she was in the queue in the final one, and we recognised it. Kevin Lee, our marketing director, recognised it, and we arranged for Sergio to do a video to her. And we sent it through to her, and it was amazing. She was overwhelmed. And then one of our local partners decided actually to fly her to the Etihad. And so we took her to Manchester to watch a game. She met Aguero. She covered all of the social media for us then, and she put it back into this market. And I think that's where we want to be nimble, we want to be quick, but we also want to reward those super fans, and we want people to sort of say, this is real. She got to meet Sergio Aguero, firstly via video, then in person, and then she actually took over our social media channels here. And they're the sorts of things we want to do. We want to be able to show people that we're real, we're here, we're live, the club is listening to what they want, and we're seeing that in the growth.
So there's those types of stories are what's sometimes overlooked by some of the clubs. Having lived in Australia, quite how tough it is being a Premier League football or a European football fan, getting up late. The proximity is just not there. And in this search that clubs have for new fans and big numbers and massive social media reach, how much do you prioritize going deep with those 17 supporters clubs and trying to build the engagement of existing fans rather than constantly striving for new?
It's vital, and I think the days of it breaks away a little bit, but the days of just going to commercial partners and saying we've got 10 million followers and you can talk to them today, partners are smarter than that now. They get into that 10 million, they know every one of them, they know where they're based, they know how they're consuming, they know what they're doing. So just the total number is not good enough. So you need not only the breadth of numbers, but you need deep relationships. And it's difficult because, I know, as you said, we will run fan events in places where we will have 200 people come. And if we spoke about 200 people turning up to an event in Manchester, it would be embarrassing. But this takes time. And what we know from our owners is we're on a long journey. And, we know we can hold something in Shanghai or Beijing or Chengdu now and have thousands of people turn up. But we also have to work to the other markets in a deep, genuine way. Fans are real. If they don't feel that you're listening, if they don't feel a genuine love, they'll move on. I think you said there's 40 clubs here, all trying to get that piece of attention. So winning is vital, but you also must have a deep relationship. So we have a dual strategy. There's no question we want to grow the numbers, but we grow the numbers in a tactical way, but we also need that deep relationship.
And that proximity, the physical proximity, is becoming increasingly important to the fans. We've seen Barcelona setting up experience centres. We've seen your crosstown rivals in Manchester setting up, planning to set up 3 experience centres in China. Is that going to be a part of your strategy, setting up something on the ground in that?
Yeah, I think what's probably most important for us is when we talk about setting up, we're here. I live in Chengdu. We have an office in Shanghai with 20 people, all from China. So first and foremost, it's about being here and being real. It was said just before, you can't pretend you're in China and not physically be present. The second one is we don't spend a lot of time, and I mean this in a humble way, we actually don't spend a lot of time looking at what other people are doing because our model is unique. We would look at those clubs you mentioned, and they're clearly 2 of the biggest clubs in the world. So our focus is probably more on grassroots of growing the club in Chengdu. It's on engagement around Manchester City. It's about meaningful relationships. It's probably less about looking at what others are doing and then replicating that. And we'll see. The great thing about these journeys is in 10 years' time, someone's going to say, that was an unbelievable idea. And then someone's going to say, how stupid were they not to do that? We're probably taking slightly different tact.
And even on that unique approach to grassroots specifically, you guys are slightly different in that you're not training players to be brought over to Manchester. You're not training players. You're not necessarily training young Chinese players to bring them over to the first team and the youth teams. It's all about growth in this domestic market.
Yeah, I think that's the first point is we have to play our part in the football ecosystem here, and that has to be to improve young footballers here to improve the local league. And we can play a small part in that. In the first role, we're going to play that at Chengdu. I was watching an academy session of under-12 boys 3 days ago in Chengdu. Technically, unbelievably gifted. You could drop them into Manchester, drop them into Australia, drop them into New York. These 11-year-old boys were incredibly gifted. But our goal is to get these boys into our Sichuan team, not to Manchester. And maybe then from the Sichuan team, they go to Australia. Maybe then New York, maybe then Manchester. But our starting point is not to say, how do we get a player from China to Manchester City? Because the reality is, for any of the big 6 clubs in the world, you have to be one of the best players in the world. And that's not where we're starting here.
And the clubs talk about digital being first and foremost the priority strategy for them, but training and grassroots has specifically or traditionally been quite old school in the way that clubs have approached it in China. How do you feel digital can and will play a role for you in grassroots?
Yeah, I think for us, football is always first. And there is no question the way you can get to the broader masses is through digital. It has to be. And whether that's sharing coaching techniques, coach to coach, interactions, that's important. But I think that's very different to improving what we would say are technically gifted footballers. So we have a dual strategy there now, and we will stick with that, which is the broader football community that want to understand some of the things that Pep does and the reason why we do it. Let's give them ability to access that. But the gifted 10-year-old in Chengdu, how do we make sure we're not losing that boy to basketball or swimming or another sport? We have to. This is people. We need football experts watching matches, identifying talent, bringing them into our system, having a lovely career progression where a young boy sees how he can get to playing, hopefully in the CSL and representing the national team.
So on those numbers, it's one of the reasons why you are a very successful club commercially in China. Do you guys prioritize traditional global partners looking at China, or do you feel that there's more of an interest from new local partners in coming on board with the club?
Yeah, I think, we're probably benefiting from having an office here for 5 years. There is no question, and led by an amazing guy, David Tung, a local who's understands football, understands the sports industry. I would say we then have an incredible Singaporean office who is able to focus on the broader global deals. So we have amazing Chinese partners. We announced one last week. We have Ubitech, who has gone from being a smaller partner 3 years ago to now having a bigger partnership, to taking an acquisition in the club with us. And we would like to think people join us for a reason, and they join us on a journey. So I think we have different people that can deliver different stories, and currently that's helping us. That's we're able to bring lower level sponsors in, or partners in, at a club level at Sichuan, but we can also bring in global partners like Ubitech, who are doing global programs for us, and that's what's unique.
And for those partners, both local, global, how you guys are second most followed, one of the most popular teams on social media in China. How important is that digital strength to those partners?
Yeah, it's vital. It's vital. One of the things that we're really proud of is that growth has been over the last 5 years. So we know they're connected fans. So we have local partners who are able to connect with people that are interested and active. They can communicate digitally, but they can also come and physically engage them at our live sites. When we did a trophy tour last year, the matches this year. So we're able to have that nice blend of digital engagement, but real face-to-face, telling a story, bringing a trophy, those sorts of things.
And on storytelling, you guys have done a great job with some original content partnerships globally. Is there a model for either to bring some of that content distributed in China, or even to create your own original long-form content pieces and video here?
I think there is. We saw in that video very quickly there, you saw the Aguero piece when we were in Beijing, the Great Wall. I think once again, you've got to be local. It's no good bringing our first team here and just having them do normal football stuff. They've got to engage with the local community. We've got to try and get them, if they're in Sichuan, they have to try spicy food. This is normal. So you have to be flexible. We're lucky we have young players who are open to it. I think if you went back, say, 7, 8 years ago, Manuel's era, we probably had players that were more staid and weren't open to be a little bit more creative. And if you go and look at some of our biggest hits, actually last week we did a bloopers on the weekend. If you haven't seen it, track it down. It's Kevin De Bruyne dropping the Premier League trophy, but we had a fake Premier League trophy, and it was the most hit last week by a mile of any sport brand. And I think that's what you have to be, is creative and nimble and local, and that was a good example.
So having those young players, does that able you to help build an authentic connection? Because it's no longer really about having a player stand on a green screen and say, "Ni hao, China." Like, do you find that the players are quite supportive and cooperative when it comes to digital media activations for this part of the world?
I think they are. I think certainly, players under the age of 30 are as digitally savvy as anyone we know. We shouldn't hide that fact. And they have great people working for them and in and around them, promoting their own social media channels. So I think for us, it needs to be unique. What we would find is if our digital team were continually presenting the same thing that everyone else was doing, our players are not interested. If it's completely unique and fun and engaging, they want to do it. They absolutely want to do it. And whether it's interacting, we had one in Abu Dhabi 2 years ago now, where we had the captain of Melbourne at the time and the captain of Manchester, Vincent. We put them in a plane simulator and got them to land an A380, and it was hilarious. The players clearly loved this. They were actually sitting in a proper simulator trying to land a plane. It was disastrous, as you can imagine. But they love that. Nowhere, anywhere are those two players ever going to get to fly an A380, but they were able to do it at the Etihad Centre.
So that's a unique trait, that the players are so cooperative. You obviously can't bring the first team here all the time. You get essentially one shot a year to take them somewhere around the world. What do you bring from Manchester over to China, sort of physically, whether trophy tour, whether Legends tours? Do you try and keep a longer term, more consistent approach to being present here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we want to see our first team here every 2 to 3 years. It's 3 years this time, and there is no question that's echoed from our chairman down. We can then support that when we win to bring the trophies. The trophy was here last year. We had the trophy here for 4 days. Paul Dickov travelled with it. It was a phenomenal way to engage. And it doesn't matter whether you're 5 or 55, you want the photo with the Premier League trophy. Everyone wants it. So as long as we keep winning trophies, the trophy will keep coming back. And then the other great thing we have is we have clubs all around the world that need to play matches. So whether it's Melbourne City coming here for a pre-season game, whether it's Girona coming for a pre-season game, or New York City, we're able to be present with football here. And similarly, we're able to be present by taking our football club here overseas. So that's vital for us. So we'll continue to do that. We want to have activations every year that make football relevant here in this market.
So time for one more, and I'll to be fair, go with the same one that Jordi answered. He talked about the culture, building the culture of football, and again, that teamwork element is going to be the key to China's success. What do you feel is the thing that they need to get right in order to build their domestic game to the strength they want it to be at?
Yeah, I think we should all be real in saying everyone in this room, everyone at this conference plays a part in the football ecosystem. Whether you're a journalist, a coach, an administrator, a journalist, a digital executive, whatever you do, you play a part, and we have to play an important part in that. I think what's important is we need to understand the local idiosyncrasies. We need to embrace them. It's pointless if we come here and say, this is the way to do it. If you don't do it this way, it will fail, because that doesn't work. And we know that from operating all around the world. So we have to embrace change and challenge, and we have to adopt, and we have to make sure that we're able to say, hand on our heart, we actually have made a difference and we've been able to improve things. And this is a long-term play. I think if people think they can come into a market like China and make a change in a year, this is not realistic. We've now been here 4 years. We made our acquisition this year. We have a good business. We're very aggressive. We want to be better. But it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of engagement with the locals. And we see that. We will resource heavily again this year with the local people. We want to take international experience, but we want local people, because I need help to be able to do that, and we need the local expertise to do that.
Well, we look forward to seeing it grow, and we'll check in again next year, Soccerex, to see how it's progressed. But it's been a pleasure having you on stage. Jordi, thank you very much. Could we have a big round of applause for the two of them?
Thank you.